Could we get two mics up here, please? So now I want to welcome Antonio Gisbert, the chief petitioner of the Oregon Rebate, on the stage to have a conversation about this exciting new development. So hi, Antonio. How are you? How you feeling? Is it on?
I'm feeling all right. Thank you. Thank you, Maddox. Thank you, Stacy, for the opportunity to be up here speaking, and thank you all for being here and sharing your time with me. I am truly humbled to be here, so thank you.
No, we're super excited to have you here and to have this conversation with you. So for us to get started, I first want to ask you, can you tell us what is the Oregon Rebate and what does it do?
Thank you, super glad. So the Oregon Rebate is a statewide ballot initiative in Oregon. It's pretty straightforward. The proposed legislation is only 4 pages long. It does two things. It increases the minimum corporate tax rate for giant corporations that do business in the state of Oregon.
Right, yes.
Thank you. And then with that giant pool of money, we just rebate it back to the people of Oregon.
Woo! We love that. I love that.
So it's important to be specific about who we mean by the people of Oregon, and that is everyone, which is, we often use the word here universal, but more specifically, let's dig into what universal means. For us, universal means absolutely everyone who has lived in the state for more than 200 days of the previous calendar year. That explicitly includes everybody regardless of age, income, or status. It doesn't matter if you pay taxes or don't pay taxes. It doesn't matter if you're housed or unhoused. It doesn't matter what your immigration status is. We're building protection specifically for undocumented Oregonians. It also doesn't, and we also build specific protections for adults in custody. We went to great lengths to make sure that everybody was in and nobody was out. And thank you. And that's pretty tricky because of the 4 pages of the proposed legislation, about 3 of them are just listing of protections for members of communities that have been historically marginalized and underinvested in. So that's kind of like a big, we know this because we're here, but that's what it looks like on paper. Real quickly, for the folks who care about numbers, in Oregon right now, giant corporations pay about 0.12% in taxes to the state, which we think that's kind of bullshit because humans pay between 5 and 10%. So we bumped that up to 3%, which we think is absolutely a reasonable starting point. And then that generates about $7 billion every year.
Yeah.
Thank you. If you do some quick math and divide 7 billion by 4.2 million Oregonians, you get about $1,600 per person per year, one-time payment.
That's amazing. No, talk about radical policy.
And yeah, thank you. And also, thanks to Max and Policy Engine, we kind of did some simulations on the impact in our communities. And there's too many for me to remember, but specifically, we expect the Oregon Rebate to reduce poverty in the Hispanic and Latinx communities of Oregon by about 50%. In the Black communities, the data is less robust there, but we are thinking of about 30%. Child poverty will go down by about 50% as well, and poverty among seniors will go down by about 30%. So it's kind of a big deal.
No, it is a big deal. And I love that you have all the stats and data on how it will impact people already. So can you tell us, like, how did it actually come to be? How did the Oregon rebate come to be?
Thank you so much. That's actually like the best part of this whole story for me. And absolutely the thing that I am most proud of having done in my entire life. So back in 2018 or so, I used to be a union organizer. So shout out.
Make some noise.
So I organized, really all that I've done here is that I've organized and facilitated a 8-month-long consensus-based conversation between about a dozen of my friends, community members, super diverse, tons of lived experience. Everybody there had a PhD in life, right? Just like amazing people that I would take a bullet for, right? And so that's a magic sauce, and that's the secret to this whole thing, right? That like you have to start with amazing people. And it matters who's in the room designing policy. So for example, when the state legislature back in the early 80s, they came up with a corporate tax rate, you know, I'm not sure who's in that room. I mean to look up who was, but it's probably a community of folks that did not look like us. It was probably just a bunch of electeds. No disrespect to electeds, but these specific electeds thought that it was appropriate for corporations to pay 0.12% in tax. And when I facilitated this conversation, the group, via consensus, settled on 3%. And I think that's an indication of like the values that we bring to the space, like make a difference, right? Laws are instantiations of our values, of our morality, and like it sort of matters who you ask. Just some quick. I don't want this to appear like tokenism at all. So forgive me, but I think it's important to uplift the fact that 3 of the 12 folks who developed the Oregon rebate were experiencing some degree of houselessness at the time, right? We are super racially diverse, much more so than the state in general. Politically, there was a registered Republican and a communist. The communist was not registered, and everybody in between. The youngest person was 17, the oldest person was in their 70s, right? And you know, some of us have like degrees from like fancy universities, and a bunch of us in the space had GEDs, and that's totally cool, right? Like we're all experts in what makes the world a better place, and that's what we're trying to do.
I love that. You had that intergenerational, diverse backgrounds, diverse perspectives to really encompass the experiences of a lot of folks. So what is the state of the ballot measure right now? Where is it currently?
Yeah, after quite a bit of work, I'm happy to report that sorry, I should back up a second. This is a ballot initiative, and I want to make sure that we all are on the same page about what that means, right? So it's a ballot initiative is a form of direct democracy. About half of the states in the U.S. Have this, so like California, Washington, Colorado, and a bunch of others, right? And basically what happens is that people come together, draft a proposed law, then they collect a bunch of signatures. If you meet a threshold, you qualify to be on an election, and then the voters of the jurisdiction vote up or down your proposed legislation. So you should check your state. You might be able to do this. And so to your question of where we are, we turned in about 170,000 signatures a few weeks ago. The Secretary of State, thank you. The Secretary of State is validating and counting, and it's kind of like making news here. We have not heard officially yet, but unofficially, we have qualified for the November 2024 election. So, so yeah, in November we'll get to choose between like what we want, who we want to be our president, and then like further down the ballot, you know, the people of Oregon will decide to choose if they want to tax giant corporations a bit more to give themselves a yearly rebate. So it's cool.
So, when you say that this was an outsider campaign, what does that mean, and how has that impacted your process?
Yeah, thank you. We're about as people-powered as you can be. Those the ballot initiative drafting like literally happened in like coffee shops and bars in and around Eugene, Oregon, right? Like we we uh, we did not have a dollar to our name for the first 3.5 years, and I should explicitly thank Giselle Huff, whose leadership and courage she and her foundation were the first people to like actually make significant financial contributions to our campaign. So thank you for that. I think that being people powered has advantages and disadvantages. On the good thing about being people powered is that you can really center your values and the people in the work, because you're not accountable to any other force other than your moral compass. And that's super, super important, right? And we express those values by, for example, in the text of the initiative, making sure that everybody's included. You know, I'm pretty sure that no political consultant is ever going to say, hey, do this thing and make sure that undocumented Oregonians are equally eligible. Like, it is a shame that there's so much hate in our society, but it's good that we do not have to buy into that hate, and we can lean on love and inclusion, right? That's like super important. Another thing about being just super grassroots and outsiders is that you have the freedom to walk the walk and to live your values. So, for example, one thing that early days, we thought, okay, we're going to do this ballot initiative all on volunteer power because we don't have any money, and it's fine. But then upon like further examination of that concept, number one, it's pretty much impossible. And number two, it's also kind of toxic, right? We know as like activists and movement leaders that so much of social justice has historically happened on the backs of mostly women of color, and in being uncompensated labor, and that's fucking bullshit, right?
Talk about
So I will say thank you to everybody who's been doing amazing work over thousands of years, on which shoulders we stand today, right? We were like, no. So we decided to not rely on volunteer labor at all, and to pay everybody what we consider to be a fair wage. And this is kind of cool. So the way we operationalize this is that we figured out the Portland median household income. You can look it up for your neighborhood. We divided that by 32 hours of work a week for the year, because we think that nobody should be working 40 hours a week anymore.
Yes.
And we came up with $44 an hour. And so, yeah, and so everybody gets paid that, right? Like, it doesn't matter what work you do, you get paid that. So that's what I get paid, and that's what everybody gets paid. And in fact, you know, we have these values. Sometimes we have to bend a little bit, and so near the end of the campaign, we started paying people more than that. So it's kind of cool. So yes, that's the good thing, is that like when you're an outsider, you can really lean into your values and like walk the walk, and it is super awesome. Sorry to say, but there's also a little bit of a problem or some inherent difficulties, right? Is that being outsiders, you sort of lack a lot of the support that makes life a little bit easier, right? So the most obvious one is funding, right? Yesterday, there was 3 amazing Black female leaders sitting here. You all remember that?
Yes.
So we're all doing the best that we can, but if you're a funder and you can hear me, please fund them, and then afterwards,
Come on.
look into what we're doing in Oregon.
Yes, we love that equity.
and maybe there's room for us too.
Yes. No, we love that. You know, people always say Oregon is a magical place. I'm like, what y'all got in the water over there? I might have to go over there.
You're always welcome.
So, what are you excited about as you move into the next phase of this campaign?
You know, the thing I'm most excited about are people. So we have always centered people in our work. So we had regular people came up with the Oregon Rebate ballot initiative, the full text. Regular people went out and collected signatures. Regular people signed the petition, and 170,000 of them, by the way. And then regular people are going to get to vote, hopefully yes, on this in November. So the thing I'm most excited about is the people. Like that's our center. The second thing I'm most excited about is that you know, we have this task at hand in November that like we are pretty laser focused on. But also we know that like after November, maybe I and everybody else can rest a little bit, but then go back again to do more work. We are building systems and processes for doing ballot initiatives more effectively and just better. And so we know that our work is not done with the Oregon Rebate, and it's super exciting to think that if anybody here needs any assistance doing a ballot initiative in their jurisdiction, please come and talk to me, because we've learned a bit about how to do that well. Or we think we're doing it well. We know some things.
I think you're doing amazing, and I hope you get some rest along the way so you continue to do this in a sustainable way. So we now want to turn it over to you all. If anyone has any questions, yes, over here. A little parkour.
Hi there. Thank you for this talk. I'm excited to learn about the ballot initiative and follow it in November. The first thing that came to my mind as you started talking was, what is Nike doing about this? Like, how are you responding to their, I know, pushback?
Yeah, thank you. I do not know exactly what Nike is doing, but I know that the Chamber of Commerce and the business organizations in Oregon are kind of freaking out about us. And I mean, we're all trying to do the best that we can. They're trying to do the best that they can, and like, I get it. But I think that, number one, we have an advantage that corporations don't vote yet, so that's good. They do have a lot of money, and they're super threatening us. They're super threatening to like spend like $10 million to defeat us in the ballot, and that's the system that we live in. It's fine. Nike and giant corporations and like the haters, generally speaking, are not really like, that's not our community, right? And I think that when we connect with people directly, when we center the people of Oregon and the voters, I think that's our path to success. I will be able to speak with a lot more conviction about this after November, so please forgive me. But yeah, I mean, it's an issue of basic justice, right? Like, why is it that corporate profits are skyrocketing when we're all having trouble making ends meet? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And the problem is not, it's not, like, we don't have to invent a new thing. We don't have to invent a vaccine. It's like, the money is there. I mean, and by there I mean like in some like offshore bank account in the Cayman Islands, right? So let's just bring some of that money back into our communities for our own betterment, and we'll be totally cool, you know?
Yeah, hi, right here. Do you expect that there will be opposition to this based on the fact that there will be, undocumented immigrants receiving it, people who are rich receiving it, or, it might inspire too many people to move to Oregon? And how do you anticipate countering that opposition potentially?
Yeah, a lot there. So in Alaska, they have a permanent fund dividend, pays about $1,200 a year, and I don't really get a feeling that people are like flocking to Alaska. So, I mean, if you want to move to Oregon, cool, and like, welcome, but whatever, you know? It's actually super nice there, I really like it. I'm blanking out on. Yeah. On immigrants, let's see, okay, so I feel like the greatest force in the universe is not like gravity, but it's greed, right? And like, we gotta deal with that, and that's part of the conversation that we're having. And so, I think that when we center on our shared humanity, I think that we can have a conversation about how everybody's equally deserving. And in society, we have all kinds of systems that are designed for everybody. Like one of my personal favorites is the public library, right? Everybody in the community can use the public library. Some rich guy can go to the public library, doesn't offend me. Somebody who's not rich goes to the public library. I think that's great too. It doesn't really matter. It's sort of like self-sorting, same as roads, or in an idealized world, not the world that we live in today. For example, you think of like the court system would be equally fair for everybody, regardless of status. Of course, that does not happen. We'll work on that next. But the thing about, like, I want to point out specifically this animosity towards the rich, and that's like totally a thing, right? I do a lot of work in like leftist circles, and I center on this idea of we are the 99%, and the rich are like the 1%, technically like the 0.1%, but never mind that. The fact of the matter is that if you try to cut out the rich from a benefit, you end up, that's formally means testing, and then you end up excluding a whole bunch of other people who are most deserving and in need of the benefit by introducing this hoop to jump through, right? And that is penny wise and pound foolish. If you cut out the top 1% recipients of Oregon, you only increase the size of the benefit by about $150 per person. But you exclude a whole bunch of people who are not going to be able to meet that hurdle. So that never made any sense to us, and I should say that I guess that the 12 drafters, we were underrepresented in one dimension, which was wealth. So we're not perfect. We didn't have a rich guy in the room, or but it's fine. So thank you.
I have like a follow-up to that. Did you all ever consider any sort of like equity clauses for the rich? Like anything to, You know what I mean? Like, just make it more equitable since they already have such an influx of money.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we thought about this a lot. So internally, it makes much more sense to increase the top personal tax rate in Oregon from 9.9 to 10%, right? You can just change that one tenth of 1%, and then that's going to claw back all that money plus much more. And that seems like an easier way of doing things, right? We don't have to fix every problem with this one ballot initiative, but nothing's perfect. The cost of means testing and unintentionally excluding everybody who does not formally file taxes, we thought was like detrimental. At the end of the day, if some rich person gets another $1,000, it's not going to change their life. It's not really going to matter. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Okay. There was a question over here as well.
Okay.
We just have time for one more question, and we'll have to kind of pull it in.
Okay, so I'm not familiar with Oregon, so excuse if my questions aren't a little ignorant. But so I work for a shelter, and one of the biggest issues that we've had with people who are homeless is that they don't have a residential address. So again, I don't know if there's homelessness in Oregon, but how are...
Yes, a lot.
But like I said, I'm going to play dumb. How are the homeless who don't have necessarily an address able to make sure they're receiving those payments as well, since they don't really have a residence? And how are they able, and I hate to ask this question because I hate when people are asked, but how do people prove that they're homeless or don't have a residence?
Thank you. Great questions. Yeah, houselessness is a huge problem in Oregon, as is just about everywhere, so that's a fact. And here's kind of the cool thing about writing your own law, is that you can just like write what you want. So, so for example, we wrote that like, you don't have to have an address. You can use the address of an agency that provides services to people who are unhoused. And like, that just fucking works. Right?
You meet people where they're at, literally. No, thank you so much, Antonio, for everything you said. And if anyone has any questions, I know you said they can come and talk to you. So please, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.